Mixing drums can be an absolute pain, but with the right techniques, technical knowledge, and some patience, you could take drums that sound like this and turn them into this. And the best part, once you know how to craft a drum sound, you never have to use samples again if you don't want to, and no one else's drums will sound like yours. Now, just a warning, this is not a, hey, use this one compressor trick to solve everything type of video. This is a methodical, how you actually do something type of video. It's going to be boring on occasion, but always accurate and helpful long term. So let's jump into the only drum mixing tutorial you'll ever need. Now, to keep things organized, we're going to address these points one by one throughout the video, building on ideas as we go. These points are phase, dynamics, frequency response, temporal effects, and bus processing. Now, these are in the same order that we'll address them as we mix the drums. So let's start with phase part 1. When working with a multi-tracked instrument, some elements will be in phase, meaning they add together, and others will be out of phase, meaning they cancel each other out. So our first goal when mixing drums is to maximize the amount of in-phase signal. Now, you might think we need to establish the levels, which you can do, but we'll just get a rough level and save more methodical approaches for later. Now, to start, we need an anchor, so to speak, or a track or tracks that determine the correct timing. Now, what you pick is up to you, but I always choose the overheads. They contain all of the drum's info and often give an accurate depiction of the instrument as a whole. With the overheads organized at the top of the drum's tracks, I find the first big transient. In this case, I'm going to pick this snare hit. I'll zoom in and one by one, align the other track's transients with the overheads. So I'll find the same snare hit on the room mic's recording and align that with the overhead. Zooming in further, notice how the peaks and the troughs align. It won't be perfect. Different mics from different positions record different information. But getting these transients to line up is the first step to optimizing the phase relationships. Now I'll continue this process for any other ambient recordings and the snare's close mics. Then it's time to align the kick. Again, using overheads as the anchor, I'll align the transients of close kick recordings. If the overheads don't have enough of the kick to align the kick's close mics, then the room mics or another ambient full kit recording will work well. It's not perfect, but the goal at this point is to improve the relationship. Now, on occasion, you'll encounter completely out of phase tracks. Notice that this crush mic is 180 degrees out of phase with the overheads, the room mics, and just about everything else. We're not going to realign this track since it's not a timing issue, but a phase rotation issue, meaning the peaks from drums registered as troughs on the crush mic and the troughs from the drums registered as peaks. The timing was the same, but the polarity was inverted. To fix this, a utility plugin will flip the phase. Your DAW should have some type of stock plugin that does this. Now, the same issue commonly occurs with the bottom snare mic. If that happens, you can again invert the polarity. We'll continue this process for all drum tracks. Note that even if it looked like we nudged a track's timing by a lot, we're so zoomed in that any change that we made is less than 1 millisecond. Now, I used to suggest a much quicker method for doing this and fixing the phase, but this method, although slower, results in a much better sound when it's done correctly, and it makes mixing easier throughout the process because we have a better foundation. So we have the transients aligned, but you probably noticed all this other info after the transient that may or may not be aligned. And this brings me to phase part 2. When mixing a highly dynamic, multi-tracked instrument like drums, gating becomes a phase corrector. I went into a lot of detail about this in one of our last videos, and I'll link it here, but in short, our transients are aligned now, which is great, but the mic bleed isn't. The snare's transient, as recorded from the snare's close mic, may align with the overheads, but this same transient, as recorded from maybe the kick's close mic, does not align. By gating these aspects and isolating the close mics to their relevant transients, we remove all of this interference, or at the very least, we greatly reduce it. So, all kick mics, all snare mics, all tom mics, the hi-hat mic, and any other close mic that was used should be gated. What you use is up to you, of course, but I'm going to use this Acon Digital D-Bleed gate for this, using the kick model for the kicks, the snare model for the snares, and so on. I found this gate works amazingly for low-frequency instruments like the kick and the toms, whereas I chose a different gate for the snare in the end. Just like compressors or EQs, it helps to have different options for the occasion. Now, this plugin uses a neural network to determine the instrument, which I'll vary until it sounds just like the transient is getting through. Now, don't be afraid to remove a good amount of the ambience from these close mics. What we lose from cutting these out of phase, strange frequency response versions of the drum's ambience, we can replace with the purposeful ambience that we captured with our room mics. So, I'll continue this process and somewhat aggressively isolate the instruments. This next step is optional, but it really does improve the sound. I'll use a unique version of a gate, this Acon Remix, and adjust some of the levels on the overheads, the room, and maybe the crush mic. Basically, any recording that captured the full set. Now, since the overhead's kick is slightly out of phase with the room mics, and I aligned the kick's transients to the room mics earlier on, I'll pull down the kick slightly. I'll boost the snare to reinforce that in-phase relationship. I'll attenuate some of the hi-hat as well, since I want to use the close mic as the primary source for it. Now, to ensure a good phase relationship between the stereo pair, I'll make sure I use identical settings on both the left and the right overhead mics. I'll continue this process for any other full drum capture mics to highlight or attenuate what I want more or less of respectively. So now that I have everything aligned and gated, I can get an accurate depiction of the drum's levels. So now is a great time to determine the levels with faders, panning, and so on. Otherwise, you'll set the levels, cut out a big part of the recording through gating, and then you have to readjust. So let's take a listen to the original drums, followed by the aligned and the gated drums. Now, just a heads up, at this point, the drums might sound a little sterile, but notice how big of a difference we've made already. Real quick, if you have a track that you need mastered or one you've been struggling with, send it to us at sageaudio.com. Next, we have dynamics. The compressor you choose for your kick, snare, toms, etc. should be done with a lot of consideration. If you want a sharp, snappy snare, don't choose a compressor that clamps down on the transient and then holds on forever. You want something that responds quickly. Now, if you want a resonant kick, you want something that can hold on to the sustain and then, through makeup gain, bring up those details. Now, when mixing drums, compression and other dynamics processing isn't just about a consistent performance, it's about controlling the timbre and the frequency response by adjusting the relative levels of the ADSR and introducing varying amounts of distortion. Now, I'm going to use this 1176 emulation as a personal preference. This one in particular is free, it's by Analog Obsession, so if you need a free one, this is a good option. Now, at this point, soloing really comes in handy. The changes we're making are so small that you'll need to hone in on the single instrument to clearly hear what you're doing. I know people say don't solo something because you need to hear it in context, but with everything aligned and in phase, we don't have to be terribly concerned about losing a sound that we achieve when everything plays at once. Starting with the snare top recording, I'm going to make tiny changes to the attack and release until I hear the snap that I want from the snare's attack and decay, and some of the resonance that I want from the sustain and release. With a compressor like an 1176, we're making changes to the behavior in literal microseconds, so you need to listen very intently. Now, I chose this compressor so that I could do the following. Let a small portion of the transient through unaffected, and then have the compressor clamp down quickly and aggressively. This way, the original hit is present, and as the compressor cuts into the middle of the transient, it reshapes the waveform, causing distortion. The release is timed to cover the range from the middle of the transient until the next snare hit. By attenuating this region, I can apply more makeup gain to increase quiet details. Now, the same logic is used with the kicks and the toms. I find the right point in the transient to cut, letting the initial hit come through, while introducing distortion from the middle of the transient onward. The compressed section is made dense, but then amplified with makeup gain. Now, conversely, say you want a smooth, maybe vintage sound. Pick a compressor that captures more of the transient, doesn't cut into it aggressively, and then holds on longer to include subsequent transients. An optical compressor, Vari-Mu or VCA compressor, will do this well. Just adjust the attack and the release until you've achieved the timbre you want. A compressor will almost always play a huge role in a drum set's frequency response, again, by affecting the relative levels of the ADSR. So, spend some extra time on this step. Now, at this point, if you want to shape, emphasize, or attenuate some frequencies you weren't able to address with compression, now is a good time to do so. Maybe some of the kick's fundamental needs to come up, or it sounds a little boxy in the low mids. so I can dip that, or the snare's high frequency snap could be accented, etc. Since we've compressed and used makeup gain to bring quieter details forward, it's easier to both identify and control the perception of these elements with EQ. Now just be sure to use identical EQ settings for any stereo pair, for example, the drum overheads. So let's take a listen to the before and after of compression and EQ. Next up, we have temporal processing. Now this is a highly subjective part of mixing drums. You might want super dry drums, or drums with 80s style gated reverb, or maybe just a nice layer on the snare. Now I don't like to add too much reverb, and instead prefer to rely on the room mics, but there are a couple of elements that could use some extra, maybe stylistic reflections. Now for the snare, I believe a send works better than inserting the effect on the track. So I'll send both the top and bottom snare tracks to an aux track and use a reverb that fits the track in the genre. Generally speaking, a plate reverb works great on snare. I recommend finding a reverb with ducking to let more of the initial transient through, while the later reflections come through after. Now if I find the right sound, I might send a little of the toms to the same reverb, but again, we're talking about subjective decisions at this point. Lastly, for reverb, I find a moderate amount of short ambient reverb works incredibly well on the hi-hat track. With the short stereo variation that a stereo reverb provides, the hi-hat becomes less of a metallic thump and more of an airy and splashy sound that's a lot more enjoyable to listen to. Now last up, let's cover a very important step, drum bus processing. Now this is where a lot of the cohesion and fullness is accomplished. As you can see here, I have 6 processors. This might be too much for what you're doing, but each step is playing an important role. First, we have compression with a little bit of makeup gain. It's subtle, but by establishing cohesive timing for the drum's ADSR as a whole, it begins to tie everything together. Next, I added a plugin I'm working on called Sage Velvet for some saturation. It uses a neural network recreation of a popular saturation circuit, so everything is very program dependent. But in short, it's adding some mild to moderate harmonics to fill out the sound, and I'm widening the overall drum set slightly with the width function. Next, I found I needed some frequency-specific stereo control. So with the midside EQ, I cut some of the side from the lows to center the kick, and I expanded a small amount of the high mids and the air. I centered the kick's fundamentals slightly and centered some of the snare's overtones with mid filters. Then, I'm using Newfangled Audio's transient expander and their EQ to first subtly enhance the attack and decay of the instrument as a whole, and then, with the EQ, amplify or attenuate critical bandwidths. Now with this preset called Bark Bands, the filters are centered on frequencies that don't conflict with one another due to how our ears process and group sounds. I find this to be a perfect way to reduce some masking and help some lost details cut through. Now to finish this chain, we have this PSP Vintage Warmer. It's limiting when it's needed, but I'm mainly using it for the upward processing that occurs with the knee function. With it, all of the quieter details are pushed forward, creating this incredibly dense and detailed sound. I'll use the multiband option, and then in the settings window, I'll reduce the attenuation time to the mids and the highs to retain some detail, but I'll keep it at the default level for the lows to avoid any distortion from quickly affecting the kick. Now since I'm bringing a lot of detail forward, the room's ambience and the reverb are amplified significantly. To account for this, I'll then adjust the room mic's level to dial in exactly how much of the ambience I want. Additionally, I routed the snare's reverb to this bus, so the reverb aux track is now much easier to hear. So I'll adjust this as needed as well. Now with some final small changes, maybe some small problems I didn't notice before and fixed here and there, these drums feel pretty great. Now of course, other instrumentation will affect how these drums sound, but with a great foundation, it's likely I'll only need to adjust a level here or there to make it work with the full mix. So let's listen to the drum bus processing enabled one at a time. They all accomplish something and then build up to the PSP processor, so that everything I want to bring forward with the knee function is there and it's ready to be amplified. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us, Sage Audio has been a mastering studio for 2 decades. To work with us, create a free account, upload your mixes, click Request Mastering, and leave any notes you'd like. The master is uploaded to your account when it's done for you to review and download. If you're not completely happy, request a revision. We're not happy with your masters until you are. The standard turnaround is $49 a track, the express turnaround is $59, and it's mastered by actual mastering engineers. Now, if you don't need anything mastered, or you'd prefer to do that part yourself, liking the video and subscribing is a great way to help us out. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.